At the family dinner, my parents gave my siblings luxury cars and gave me a bus pass. Years later, at my father's 70th birthday bash, I arrived in a cab. When they asked about my ride, I replied, "I took a cab because there's nowhere to land a helicopter at your house." I always operated under the illusion that my parents' love was a resource distributed equally among their children. That fantasy shattered during a fateful Christmas dinner at the Blackwood family's sprawling estate in Bel Air. While my siblings, Mason and Felicity, unwrapped keys to foreign sports cars tied with shimmering gold ribbons, I, Amanda, was handed a plain manila envelope. Inside was a 6-month preloaded TAPI card for the LA Metro. I smiled, a gesture of thanks I didn't truly feel, completely missing the looks of pity being sent my way from the other guests. "It's our way of helping you stay focused on your education, sweetie," my father said, flashing a smile that, at the time, I was naive enough to believe was genuine. Have you ever been so sure of something, only to have the truth slap you in the face? For me, that something was the belief that my parents loved all their children the same. That certainty crumbled during Christmas dinner at our Bel Air mansion. Our home, as always, was a spectacle of excess, dripping with professionally installed lights that blinked in rhythm and dominated by a 15-foot fir tree in the grand foyer. My mother lived for the over-the-top holiday aesthetic. A mysterious grin was plastered on my father's face all evening. "I have some very special gifts for my college graduates," he announced, raising a glass of what I knew was ridiculously expensive champagne. He first presented a massive, golden envelope to Mason. My brother tore it open with the glee of a child, nearly upending the dining table when he saw the keys to a new Mercedes. Felicity was next, letting out a series of theatrical shrieks as she received the keys to her BMW convertible. When my turn came, I was handed a simple brown paper envelope, the kind you get from a corner store. My hands trembled as I opened it, the room's sudden, suffocating silence pressing in on me. Inside was a 6-month prepaid tap card. I swallowed hard, forcing my lips into a smile. "This is our way of helping you stay focused on your education, sweetie," Dad explained, with that same smile I had once found so sincere. The pitying stares from around the table were almost unbearable. "Thank you, Dad," I managed to say, quickly stashing the card in my purse. I saw my Aunt Carol whisper something to her husband. Mason couldn't wipe the smirk off his face. Dessert was served in an awkward quiet, broken only when my brother started loudly mapping out the first road trip in his new car. Why was I the only one who needed to learn the value of hard work? The question echoed in my mind all night, but I didn't have the courage to ask it out loud. The months that followed threw the chasm between my life and my siblings into sharp relief. My reality was a 5:15 a.m. alarm to catch a series of crowded buses to get to UCLA on time. Theirs was a highlight reel on Instagram. I'd see photos of Mason leaving exclusive Hollywood clubs at 4 a.m. Felicity dropped out of law school after 2 months, declaring she'd found her true calling as a fashion influencer. And me? I was pulling double duty, majoring in business administration in the morning and taking accounting classes at night. My alarm went off when it was still pitch black outside. My mother, who rarely surfaced before 10 a.m., once saw me leaving and asked in genuine surprise, "Wow, Amanda, why do you leave so early?" How could I even begin to explain that the bus-to-rail-to-bus relay race took nearly 2 hours to cross Los Angeles traffic to get to campus? On my commute, I watched the real LA come to life. Bakers firing up their ovens, cleaning crews rushing to their first jobs, executives already glued to their phones. It was a universe my siblings didn't even know existed. At school, my classmates weren't oblivious. "How come you're the only Blackwood without a car?" my friend Julia asked one day as we waited in line at the dining hall. "My parents think it's important for me to learn how to be self-sufficient," I recited, repeating the narrative I'd invented to protect myself from the truth. "That's weird," she mused. "Didn't your brother just post a story of the new Porsche he got for his birthday?" I'd return home exhausted every evening, sometimes walking in on Felicity trying on outfits for sponsored posts, or Mason heading out to yet another party. "Want a ride to campus tomorrow?" he offered once, almost as an afterthought. "No thanks," I said. "I have to leave way too early." The truth was, I was growing accustomed to my independence. I didn't want any favors that could be held over my head later. Was I becoming bitter, or was I just becoming a realist? It was on a rainy Tuesday that I met Gabriel. I was making a desperate dash to catch the 5:40 a.m. bus. If I missed it, I'd be late for my first class. It was a real LA downpour, the kind that only seems to happen when you've forgotten your umbrella. I reached the bus stop, completely soaked, just as the doors were hissing shut. "Hold on, we got one more!" a guy from inside the bus yelled, physically holding the door open for me. "Thanks," I gasped, dripping all over the aisle. The driver, who I'd later learn was Gabriel, offered a kind smile in the rearview mirror. "Tough morning, huh? Grab the front seat here, it's a little drier." It wasn't every day you met a bus driver this considerate before sunrise. Further down the route, the bus jolted to a stop, sending my textbooks flying. Gabriel pulled over at the next stop and actually helped me gather them. "UCLA? My sister is an English major there," he commented, glancing at my accounting books. Over the next few days, I made sure to catch his bus. Gabriel would save the front seat for me, and we'd talk for the whole ride. I learned he was 26 and studying engineering at UCLA at night. "I drive during the day to pay for tuition," he explained. "No help from Mom and Dad?" I asked, and immediately cringed at my own bluntness. He just chuckled. "Let's just say my dad isn't thrilled about having an engineer for a son." Soon, Gabriel became my closest friend, and he was the first person to ask the question I'd been avoiding myself. We were at a coffee shop in Westwood, waiting for his next shift to start. "Why do your parents treat you so differently from your siblings?" he asked. "They just want me to be independent," I said, the defense now automatic. Gabriel looked at me, his eyes seeing right through the lie. "Amanda, giving someone a bus pass while their siblings get luxury cars isn't teaching independence. That's something else entirely." What on earth did he mean by that? His words stuck with me for days. One Saturday afternoon, I had to swing by the house to pick up some enrollment documents for UCLA from my father's home office. The mansion was eerily quiet. Mason was likely sleeping off a hangover, and Felicity was probably at some influencer brunch. As I walked down the upstairs hallway, I heard voices drifting from my parents' bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I froze when I heard my own name. "We can't keep funding the boys' failures and still invest in Amanda," my mother was saying, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "She's the strong one. She always figures it out." My father let out a deep sigh. "What do you want me to do? Cut off Mason's allowance after that accident? Or let Felicity without the penthouse apartment we promised her?" Paralyzed, I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Amanda never asks for anything, that's the real problem," my mother continued, her voice laced with something I couldn't decipher. "Sometimes I think she's not even—" In that exact moment, my foot clumsily knocked over a decorative vase, the clatter echoing down the hall and abruptly ending their conversation. I scrambled away and into the office, my mind racing. What was my mother about to say? "Sometimes I think she's not even our daughter?" Forgetting the documents I came for, my hands found a faded yellow folder tucked away in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. Inside, my birth certificate looked strangely pristine compared to the worn ones belonging to my siblings. I retreated to my room with more questions than answers. Poring over the document, I spotted tiny, nagging inconsistencies. Why was mine issued in Santa Barbara when our family had always lived in Los Angeles? Why were there no baby photos of me before I was 6 months old? It felt like I had just opened a door, and I wasn't sure I was ready to see what was on the other side. Could I be adopted? Would that finally explain the difference in treatment? Or was I just spinning wild theories to cope with the glaringly obvious fact that my parents favored my siblings? I can still feel the jolt of being woken up at 3 a.m, my phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. It was my mother, her voice cracking with panic. "Amanda, your brother's been in an accident." I threw on the first clothes I could find and hailed an Uber to Cedars-Sinai. Mason had flipped his brand new Porsche on the Pacific Coast Highway. "Was he drinking?" I asked, seeing my father's slumped shoulders in the waiting room. "Twice the legal limit," he answered, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. In a corner, a girl who couldn't have been older than 19 was crying, her face covered in scrapes. "Who is she?" I whispered to my mother. "She was with your brother. Please, don't mention to anyone that she was in the car." Of course. The Blackwood family playbook, sweep every problem under the imported Persian rug. Mason got away with a few broken bones, but the financial wreckage was catastrophic. 300 grand just for the settlement with the other driver's family, I overheard my father saying on the phone days later. The insurance wouldn't cover a dime because of the DUI. That same week, Felicity announced she needed $50,000 for an urgent investment in her influencer brand. I saw the sheer desperation in my father's eyes as he signed yet another check. One night, I worked up the courage to knock on his office door. "Dad, I have $20,000 saved from my research grant. If you guys need it." I couldn't finish the sentence. My mother, who was also in the room, began to cry softly. My dad looked at me with a bizarre mix of shock and, was that guilt? "No, sweetie. That's your money. You earned it." For the first time in what felt like forever, my mother hugged me, and it was a hug filled with warmth and years of unspoken words. What was happening here? "My father is Anthony Maxwell," Gabriel said casually as we grabbed coffee at a diner after a grueling day. I nearly choked on my drink. Anthony Maxwell was the CEO of Maxwell Transit, one of the biggest logistics companies on the West Coast. "The Anthony Maxwell? You're his son?" Gabriel offered a bitter smile. "Was. I was disowned when I refused to go along with his creative methods for winning city contracts. I chose to make my own way rather than live off dirty money." Gabriel's story floored me. He, like me, was living a life completely detached from his origins. The difference was, for him, it was a choice. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked, trying to fathom voluntarily walking away from that level of privilege. "Every day, and not for a single day," he replied with that cryptic grin of his. I regret the fallout, but never the decision. It was that same week I properly met Mrs. Gable, a 70-year-old woman who always rode my bus on Wednesdays. "The book girl," she called me. On one rainy afternoon, we shared an umbrella on the walk to the train station. "All this studying. What for, dear? A rich family like yours?" I was taken aback. "How do you know my family has money?" She let out a soft laugh. "Your manicured nails, the watch on your wrist, the way you speak, but your eyes, they hold the same loneliness I've seen in other wealthy people." Mrs. Gable, a retired English teacher, became the grandmother I never really had. She'd tell me stories about her former students as the bus cut through LA traffic. "You see, dear, true wealth isn't what's in your bank account, but who is walking beside you." Gabriel, Mrs. Gable, a few friends from UCLA. I was slowly building my own family, I realized. These were people who chose me, not for my last name. What a strange irony. The bus pass that was meant as a punishment was gifting me the most genuine connections of my life. "You have to come, Mandy. It's going to be the event of the season." Felicity burst into my room on a Friday night, waving a gold-leafed invitation. My sister was engaged to Mark Olson, the star quarterback for the LA Rams and a magnet for luxury brand endorsements. The diamond on her finger, the size of an almond, was offensively bright. Dad booked the entire Beverly Hills hotel, 600 guests, and John Legend is performing. The engagement party became the family's entire focus for weeks. While I was cramming for finals, our mansion was a revolving door of event planners, designers, and publicists. $500,000 on the catering alone, my mother bragged over the phone. That same day, I received a rejection letter for a grant I'd applied for to attend a summer program at the London School of Economics. $5,000 that my parents had deemed an unnecessary expense right now. 3 days before the party, disaster struck. Photos of Mark on a yacht in Cabo with 2 models were leaked online. Felicity obliterated half the living room decor before locking herself in her room. The wedding was off, but the non-refundable deposits for the party had already been paid. $1.5 million down the drain, I heard my dad murmur, his voice hollow as he scrambled to cancel what he could. That night, Felicity knocked on my door, her eyes swollen and her makeup a mess. "How do you do it, Amanda?" she asked. I was confused. "Do what?" "Be normal. Not needing some guy. Having your own, your own purpose." I wrapped my arms around my sister, feeling for the first time like we were actually seeing each other. "It's not easy," I admitted honestly. "But at the end of the day, I know that whatever I have, I built myself." She fell asleep in my bed, looking strangely younger and more vulnerable. Was this the start of a real bond between us, or just a moment of weakness she'd later pretend never happened? The email arrived when I was least expecting it. "We are pleased to inform you that your application for the Innovate Corp internship program has been accepted." I shot up from my chair in the library, earning a chorus of annoyed glares. Innovate Corp was one of the biggest tech firms in the country. Out of 3,000 applicants, only 5 were chosen for the internship, and one of them was me. My first call was to Gabriel, my voice trembling with excitement. "I got it! I can't believe I actually got it!" My first week was a whirlwind of intimidation and awe. The gleaming glass tower of Innovate Corp's headquarters in Century City felt like another planet. Professionals from every corner of the globe glided through its ultra-modern hallways. My mentor, a sharp woman named Ms. Reynolds, watched me with an intense gaze. "You're not like the other trust fund interns we get, Amanda Blackwood," she told me one afternoon. "You're hungry." By the end of the month, I was selected to present a project directly to the board. With shaky hands, I laid out my proposal for optimizing last-mile delivery logistics. To celebrate my early promotion to a full-time position, I organized a small dinner. I booked a table at Il Forno, a cozy Italian spot in Beverly Grove. Nothing extravagant, but special. The guest list was small: my parents, my siblings, Gabriel, and Mrs. Gable. On the night of the dinner, only Gabriel and Mrs. Gable showed up. A last-minute text from my mother arrived. "Sorry, honey. Your father isn't feeling well, and Mason and Felicity already had plans." I washed down the familiar taste of disappointment with a sip of wine. Gabriel reached across the table and took my hand. "They have no idea what they're missing, Amanda." Mrs. Gable, with her 70 years of wisdom, just smiled. "Sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you're born into." I looked at the 3 of us at that table, a disowned heir driving a city bus, a retired schoolteacher, and me, the bus pass daughter, and felt a strange, profound joy. "A toast," I said, raising my glass, "to new beginnings." As we clinked our glasses, an idea began to crystallize in my mind. What if Gabriel and I combined our skills into a project of our own? What if we could turn the lessons from our struggles into something much, much bigger? The call from my mother came at 3 in the afternoon, right in the middle of a critical meeting. "Your father had a heart attack. We're at Cedars-Sinai." I dropped everything and ran. When I arrived, I found Felicity sobbing hysterically in the waiting room while my mother stood frozen in a state of shock. "Where's Mason?" I asked. "We can't reach him," my mother replied, her hands shaking as she clutched her phone. I immediately shifted into crisis management mode. I was the one who spoke with the doctors, filled out the complex insurance paperwork, and arranged for private nurses. "You're so good at all this, Amanda," my mother murmured, a note of genuine surprise in her voice. What she didn't realize was that my years on public transit had been a masterclass in navigating bureaucracy and dealing with the unexpected, skills my coddled siblings never had to develop. Mason finally sauntered in hours later, reeking of alcohol, long after my father was in stable condition. "Sorry, I left my phone in the car," was his flimsy excuse, his eyes refusing to meet mine. Over the next few nights, I stayed by my father's bedside, my laptop open as I worked remotely. A stack of his mail had been mixed in with the medical documents. My eyes caught the bold red ink on bank statements, the threatening language on collection letters. Final notice: risk of foreclosure. As I sorted through the papers, the grim financial puzzle of the Blackwood family came into focus. My father's companies were drowning in debt. The Bel Air mansion had 3 mortgages against it. My siblings' lavish lifestyles were being funded by a desperate series of high-interest loans. A devastating reality hit me. We weren't rich anymore. We were just experts at pretending we were. The image of the perfect, prosperous family was as fake as my mother's society smile. "Amanda, don't forget we have our dinner date at the diner tonight." Gabriel's text was a ray of light on an otherwise stressful day. We had been officially dating for 3 months, and that simple little spot in the valley had become our place. Our love story felt as improbable as any of the plots in Mrs. Gable's old books, the tycoon's daughter and the bus driver who chose to forge his own path. That afternoon, I thought it was strange when Gabriel told me to catch the 6 p.m. bus instead of my usual 6:30. It was even stranger that he wasn't the one driving. "My buddy Marcos is covering my shift today," he'd explained mysteriously that morning. When I stepped onto the bus, I nearly gasped. The interior was strung with fairy lights and filled with flowers. And there, in the middle of the aisle, Gabriel was down on one knee, holding a small box. "A year ago, a rain-soaked girl ran onto this bus and changed my entire life," he said, his voice steady as our fellow commuters, many of them familiar faces from our daily routine, began to cheer and applaud. "I fell in love with your fight, your kindness, and your incredible strength. Amanda Blackwood, will you agree to share not just your commute, but your entire life with me?" I cried and laughed and said yes all at once as Mrs. Gable, who had been hiding in the back, tossed rose petals over us. I arranged a dinner to share the news with my family, booking a table at the Pacific Dining Car, a classic steakhouse in downtown LA. Elegant, but not flashy. And once again, no one came. My mother called at the last minute. "Your father still isn't feeling up to going out, dear." I tried to hide my hurt as Gabriel squeezed my hand under the table. "They'll realize what they've lost one day," he said softly. But would they? Or would I always be the daughter who didn't need anything? The one who always figures it out? The confirmation of my darkest financial fears came from the most unexpected source. "Ms. Blackwood, this is Mr. Davies from the Corporate Risk Department at the bank. We need to discuss your father's companies." The man's formal tone sent a chill down my spine. We met at a discreet coffee shop on Rodeo Drive, where he handed me a thick file. "Your father has 6 months to rectify his financial situation, or he will lose everything." The figures were staggering. Nearly $20 million in debt. The mansion, the cars, the company itself. Every asset was leveraged to the hilt. My father had maintained a glittering facade while his empire crumbled from within. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked the banker, bewildered. "Your father asked me to," he replied. "He said you were the only one in the family with a head for business." That night, Gabriel and I talked until the sun came up. "I have an idea," he said finally, his eyes bright with possibility. "I'm done being just a bus driver with an engineering degree. You're an expert in business and accounting. What if we start our own logistics consulting firm? We could combine my hands-on knowledge of urban transit problems with your strategic management skills." The idea was brilliant, but the timing felt impossible. How could I launch a new business with my family on the brink of collapse? "If you bail your father out now, he'll never learn the lesson," Gabriel said, seeming to read my mind. "Sometimes you have to let people face the consequences of their actions in order to grow." His words hit me like a physical blow. Wasn't that exactly what my parents had done to me? The bus pass, the calculated neglect, hadn't that forced me to build the very strength I would now need to survive? Maybe this time, it was their turn to learn a few hard lessons. In the meantime, I had my own path to forge. "Felicity, I have a proposition for you." I sat across from my sister at a cafe at the Grove, her natural habitat for hours of Instagram photo shoots. Her follower count had plummeted since the scandal with her fiancé, and brand partnerships were evaporating. "Innovate Corp is looking for someone in the marketing department. I mentioned you to my boss." My sister looked like a different person without her designer clothes and gaudy jewelry, much of which had been returned after her contracts were terminated. "You'd do that for me? After how we've all treated you for years?" The question, the first real acknowledgement of the disparity, caught me off guard. "We're family," I replied, the words feeling both true and hollow. In reality, a part of me needed to prove that I was better than the treatment I had received. 2 weeks later, Felicity was fired. She was a no-show for 3 consecutive days, no call, nothing, my boss explained, looking deeply uncomfortable. I found my sister in her room, crying. "I can't do it, Amanda. The corporate world, the deadlines, the schedule, how do you stand it?" I sat beside her on a bed that had cost more than an entry-level sedan. "It isn't easy, Felicity. It never was. The only difference is, I never had another choice." Our conversation stretched for hours. For the first time, she truly listened. "I was always so jealous of you," she confessed, shocking me. "Your independence. How smart you are. While I was drowning myself in meaningless parties, you were building something real." I hugged her. a tangle of conflicting emotions rising in my chest. Was it possible to forgive years of casual cruelty and neglect? More importantly, could I help her find her own way without just solving her problems, the way our parents always had? Everyone has their own struggle to face, I told her. Maybe it's time you found yours. The email landed in my inbox just as I was wrapping up a meeting. Dear Ms. Blackwood, we are pleased to offer you the position of Associate Director of Operations at our London office. I had to read it 3 times for the words to sink in. Innovate Corp's UK subsidiary was offering me a salary that would have made even my father, in his glory days, raise an eyebrow. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, Gabriel said that night as we ate pizza on the tiny balcony of my Silver Lake apartment. His eyes were shining with pride, but I saw something else there too, a flicker of sadness. Would you come with me? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Amanda, our business is just getting off the ground, and I still have another year of my degree. Our dream of a logistics consulting firm had just landed its first few clients. How was I supposed to choose between my professional future and my personal one? That Sunday, I went to my parents' mansion for the obligatory monthly lunch. I took in every detail of the house that could soon be lost. The obscenely expensive paintings, the family silver, the perfectly manicured gardens. My father, still frail from the heart attack, seemed to shrink at the head of the table. As Mason launched into another story about his nightlife, I thought about telling them about London. I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. I went home with a strange feeling weighing on my chest, part guilt, part relief. Why didn't I tell them? The truth hit me on the bus ride home. I didn't want their judgment. I didn't need their approval, and most of all, I didn't trust them to be genuinely happy for me. At what point does sharing your life with your family become a calculated choice? Maybe it's when you finally realize they never truly shared their lives with you. Flow logistics, efficiency in motion. Gabriel and I toasted with cheap coffee as we unboxed our first set of business cards. Our small office space in Playa Vista seemed minuscule next to the surrounding corporate behemoths, but it was ours. With my savings and the money Gabriel got from selling his grandmother's condo, we launched the dream that had been born on a city bus. Our first client came from a referral from one of Gabriel's old engineering professors, a regional pharmacy chain struggling with their delivery network. I spent nights buried in spreadsheets analyzing routes, while Gabriel pinpointed logistical bottlenecks that only someone who'd driven the chaotic streets of LA for a living could understand. We were trembling with nerves when we presented our solution, but we were confident in our work. When they signed the contract, I cried in the office bathroom, not from joy, but from sheer, unadulterated relief. We weren't just dreamers. We were capable. One client became 3, then 7, then a dozen. We hired our first employee, then our second. Our unique method, fusing academic business strategy with practical, on-the-ground knowledge, started getting noticed. An article in Forbes highlighted our innovative approach that saved small businesses an average of 37% in logistical costs. That same day, I got a text from Mason. Looks like that bus pass came in handy after all, huh? It was the closest I'd ever get to a compliment from him. Then, on a random Wednesday, a single phone call changed everything. Ms. Blackwood, this is Daniel Chen from Global Transit Dynamics. I held my breath. They were a multinational firm with operations in 43 countries. We read the piece on your company and would like to schedule a meeting. Gabriel gripped my hand as we listened to their proposal. They wanted to acquire our methodology and hire us as chief consultants. The numbers they threw out made my head spin. In 2 years, we had gone from a bus pass to a multi-million-dollar valuation. And the most incredible part? The decision was entirely ours to make. The invitation arrived in a gold leaf envelope, a touch of irony that was not lost on me. Anthony Blackwood celebrates his 70th birthday. It was to be a massive party at the mansion. My mother's voice was giddy on the phone. Your father insists on having everyone there. It's going to be a landmark event. She had no idea, no one did, that I knew about the foreclosure auction scheduled for the following week. The party was to be the Blackwood family's swan song, one last gasp of opulence before the inevitable fall. I stared at the invitation for hours, weighing my options. The meeting with the executives from Global Transit Dynamics had ended with a seven-figure check as a down payment for the acquisition of our methodology. Gabriel and I were, by any definition, officially wealthy, not with borrowed or inherited money, but with wealth we had earned through our own grit and intellect. "Are you going to tell them?" Gabriel asked as we celebrated over dinner at Spago. "I think I have a better idea," I replied, a newfound confidence surging through me. The next morning, I made a call to the bank that held the mortgages. I'd like to settle all of the Blackwood family's outstanding debts. The bank manager went quiet on the other end of the line, likely assuming I was having some kind of breakdown. After I wired the funds and sent the confirmation, his stunned silence was palpable. "Ms. Blackwood, are you certain? This is the entire outstanding balance, nearly $20 million. I had never been more certain of anything in my life. That same afternoon, I signed the purchase agreement for my first helicopter, a Robinson R-44. It was nothing ostentatious, but it would be more than sufficient for making a grand entrance when the moment called for it. I instructed the dealer to keep the aircraft in a hangar until the night of the party. I didn't breathe a word of it to anyone, not even Gabriel, who found it hilarious when I told him I was taking a cab. "What's this? Is Cinderella taking a cab to the ball instead of a pumpkin carriage?" he joked. If only he knew. But some surprises, I thought, are worth keeping until the perfect dramatic moment, aren't they? The Bel Air mansion was ablaze with light, a line of luxury cars snaking down the driveway. I asked the taxi driver to pull over at the corner. "You sure, miss? The rain's coming down pretty hard." I nodded, feeling the cold drops on the back of my neck as I walked the final stretch to the entrance. I wanted to soak in every detail of this night, every emotion, every thud of my racing heart. This was the moment I had been unconsciously waiting for since that Christmas of the tap card. The butler announced my name as I entered the grand ballroom, which was already packed. Aunts, uncles, my father's old business partners, local politicians. They all raised their glasses as I walked in. At the center of it all stood my father, looking both older and somehow more regal in his custom-tailored suit. "Amanda, there you are. What held you up? And where's Gabriel?" Before I could answer, Mason swaggered over, champagne flute in hand. "Let me guess, the bus broke down?" His laugh echoed, and a few guests chuckled uncomfortably. "I took a cab," I answered, my voice even and calm. "Because there's nowhere to land a helicopter at your house." The silence that fell over the room was immediate and absolute. My father's brow furrowed in confusion. Mason laughed again, louder this time. "That's a good one! As if you have a helicopter!" I reached into my purse and placed 3 items on the ornate table in front of them: the paid-off deed to the mansion, the key to the helicopter, and my faded 7-year-old tapis card. "Happy birthday, Dad. Your gift is not losing this house next week." My father's face was a rapid-fire sequence of 1,000 different emotions. My mother brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. Felicity moved closer, her expression one of pure disbelief, while the color drained from Mason's face. "How did you—" my father started, his voice cracking. "The tap card," I said, my finger resting on the worn piece of plastic. "It taught me the value of hard work, remember? While you were all building castles in the sand, I was building a real foundation." My father picked up the card, his hands trembling. "I never imagined—" His voice broke. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. "That Christmas night, I thought I was teaching you a lesson. But the truth is, you were teaching me what real strength looks like." 3 months later, I parked my car. Yes, I finally bought one, but I still take the bus sometimes. In front of our new office building. Gabriel was waiting for me at the entrance, standing beside my parents. Flow Logistics now occupied an entire floor in a Century City skyscraper with 40 employees. After his heart attack, my father had stepped back from his own business, but he came in 3 times a week to offer his experience as an advisor. My mother, for the first time, looked at me with what I knew was genuine, unadulterated pride. Mason was in rehab, finally confronting his demons, and Felicity had launched a small but passionate sustainable fashion line, discovering a purpose beyond her own reflection. As for me, I had the old tap card framed on the main wall of my office. Beneath it, a small brass plaque read, "Sometimes the most valuable gift is the one that feels like a punishment." That afternoon, as Gabriel and I were heading out for lunch, I saw Mrs. Gable waiting at the bus stop across the street. I ran over and threw my arms around her. "Well, look at you! The book girl is the boss now," she said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "I always knew you'd go far." I insisted she join us for lunch, and as we walked, she asked, "And the bus pass? Do you still have it?" I smiled and pointed back at the gleaming skyscraper behind us. "It's in there, reminding me every single day that what feels like rejection is sometimes the only push we ever needed." Later that night, lying next to Gabriel in our new apartment overlooking the glittering expanse of the LA skyline, I thought about how life comes full circle. The very same tap card that had made me cry tears of humiliation had given me a world that no amount of money could ever buy. True friends, real love, inner strength, and finally, a family that truly saw me. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you were handed a bus pass while everyone around you got a luxury car, would you see it as a curse, or would you recognize the blessing in disguise? Because in the end, it's not about the vehicle they give you. It's about where you learn to drive yourself.